The clash between judicial authority and technological innovation is not just a matter of legal versus technical, it is a fundamental confrontation between two contrasting visions of how society should be governed and how power should be exercised. On one side stands the legal establishment, represented by figures like Judge Amy Coney Barrett, who operate within a framework that has been meticulously constructed over centuries. This structure values precedent, rules of evidence, and carefully measured reasoning. It is built to ensure stability, fairness, and a consistent interpretation of the law. On the other side, innovators like Elon Musk challenge that very structure, often operating outside traditional boundaries, pushing limits, and redefining the possible in ways that the legal system can find hard to anticipate or control. The courtroom becomes the modern-day coliseum where these two ideologies are pitted against each other, not through violence, but through words, wit, and willpower. The legal mind seeks to maintain order, while the innovator thrives in disruption. The law tries to restrain chaos, innovation sometimes welcomes it. Yet in today's rapidly shifting landscape, the lines are no longer so clearly drawn. When Elon Musk enters the legal spotlight, he carries with him not just the weight of his businesses but the cultural symbolism of a tech mogul who dares to reshape the future. Whether it's space travel, electric vehicles, artificial intelligence, or social media platforms, Musk represents a force that bypasses bureaucracy in favor of bold experimentation. This instinct to operate on the edge, to move fast and break things, often clashes with the slow, deliberative pace of the judicial system. Judge Barrett, grounded in constitutional interpretation and legal reasoning, sees Musk as a figure who must be held accountable like any other citizen. To her, no amount of genius or public adoration exempts someone from the rule of law. But herein lies the tension. Musk's innovation threatens to outpace the ability of the legal system to respond. Laws that were written for a pre-digital age strain under the weight of the questions his technologies raise. How do you regulate AI when the very concept of intelligence is being redefined? How do you apply existing labor laws to a Mars colony? What happens when neural link technology challenges fundamental concepts of autonomy and privacy? Judge Barrett's attempt to intimidate Musk may be seen as an assertion of traditional authority, a reminder that even the most powerful innovators are still subject to societal rules. She may enter the courtroom expecting compliance, humility, perhaps even fear. But Musk is not a man who bends easily. He has publicly defied regulatory bodies, taken on unions, and dared to challenge the Securities and Exchange Commission with a single tweet. In the courtroom, this resistance does not dissolve, it crystallizes. Musk approaches legal confrontation not with deference but with strategy, using the spotlight to turn proceedings into a spectacle. For someone like Judge Barrett, who values order and decorum, this kind of unpredictability becomes not just a procedural challenge but a philosophical one. Her worldview is that the law should guide society. Musk's worldview is that society must evolve faster than the law. This conflict reflects a deeper societal struggle. Courts were once the final word on truth and justice. But now, with social media platforms capable of shaping public opinion in real time, with artificial intelligence writing persuasive arguments, and with tech CEOs commanding larger audiences than many political leaders, the balance of influence is shifting. The courtroom is no longer the sole arena of judgment, it is one among many. Musk knows this. His every appearance, even in legal settings, is a performance with multiple audiences: the judge, the media, his followers, and the markets. Judge Barrett, on the other hand, is trained to focus on the law, on precedents, on judicial integrity. When these two forces meet, the friction is palpable. This is not just a story of one judge and one entrepreneur. It is the story of an old world order meeting the new. In the past, governments regulated businesses. Today, tech giants are building infrastructures that rival those of nations. While the judiciary works through decades of case law, tech companies release updates that fundamentally change communication, privacy, and even mental health overnight. In this environment, figures like Musk are not just businessmen, they are architects of modern life. And when those architects appear in court, they bring with them the weight of the future. Judge Barrett represents a tradition that must defend its relevance in this new age. She stands as a protector of democratic principles, yet she must engage with people who operate in realms where democratic oversight is tenuous at best. The courtroom dialogue between Barrett and Musk becomes symbolic of this broader dialogue between past and future. When Barrett challenges Musk, she does so with legal precision and intellectual rigor, questioning motives, decisions, and consequences. But Musk responds with a different kind of fluency, one rooted in systems thinking, innovation cycles, and a tolerance for ambiguity that the law often resists. They speak almost different languages, each fluent in their domain but struggling to translate to the other. This breakdown in mutual comprehension creates tension, but also reveals the growing gap in how society interprets power, responsibility, and progress. Legal systems are inherently reactive, they respond to events after they occur. Innovation, on the other hand, is proactive, shaping events before consequences are fully understood. Judge Barrett may attempt to place boundaries around Musk's actions, to assert that even the most advanced technologies must answer to legal and moral codes. But Musk, in pushing against those boundaries, forces the legal system to evolve. He exposes its limitations and provokes critical questions about its adaptability. The encounter becomes more than a legal skirmish, it becomes a test of which system is more resilient, more visionary, more capable of defining the next era. At its core, this clash is not just about personality, it is about pace. The judicial process values deliberation. Technological innovation values acceleration. Barrett and Musk personify this contrast. As they engage, they reveal the broader challenges that face every society grappling with rapid change. Can tradition and disruption coexist? Can the law keep up with the future? Can authority adapt without losing legitimacy? These are the stakes of this encounter. The courtroom becomes the battleground not just of arguments, but of worldviews. The clash between judicial authority and technological innovation represents a deeper philosophical divide that goes beyond courtroom decorum or corporate ambition. It touches the very foundation of how power is interpreted, exercised, and challenged in the modern world. Judicial authority, rooted in centuries of legal tradition, is designed to uphold structure, accountability, and constitutional boundaries. It is inherently conservative, not in the political sense, but in the structural one, favoring order, consistency, and precedent. Technological innovation, on the other hand, thrives on disruption, constant evolution, and the relentless pursuit of what lies ahead. Innovators like Elon Musk do not merely operate in a business framework, they function in a realm where boundaries are tested and redefined daily. This constant push forward often places them in the crosshairs of institutions meant to regulate and restrain. Judge Amy Coney Barrett embodies the intellectual weight and procedural rigor of the U.S. Supreme Court. She represents a legal worldview grounded in textualism, where the original meaning of the Constitution guides her interpretations. In this mindset, rules exist not to be bent but to be upheld with fidelity. When someone like Elon Musk enters the legal arena, he brings with him a vastly different energy. Musk is not constrained by historical frameworks. His decisions often hinge on what the future demands rather than what tradition dictates. His ventures, from electric cars to space exploration to neural interfaces, are not only ambitious but often exist in a legal gray area where lawmakers and courts have not yet fully defined jurisdiction or oversight. This makes him a unique legal subject, one that courts are not always prepared to handle with the tools they currently possess. The tension begins when the courtroom becomes the stage for this confrontation. A place meant to enforce structure and responsibility is now faced with an individual whose entire philosophy rests on innovation and breaking molds. For Judge Barrett, the courtroom is sacred ground where logic and the rule of law must prevail. For Musk, it might simply be another arena where ideas are tested, where narratives are shaped, and where public opinion can be influenced as easily as legal outcomes. This discrepancy is not merely stylistic, it is systemic. The legal process is slow by design. It requires time for evidence to be gathered, for arguments to be made, and for decisions to be reasoned with care. Technology does not wait. It accelerates daily, forcing society to confront dilemmas that evolve faster than any legislature or court can respond to. This reality forces both Barrett and Musk into uncomfortable territory. The judge must grapple with the inadequacy of existing laws to fully encapsulate the ethical and practical consequences of emerging technology. Musk, for his part, must navigate a system that demands accountability even when innovation does not fit neatly into traditional categories of responsibility. For example, when an autonomous vehicle causes a fatal accident, who is to blame? The coder? The company? The machine? The law does not yet have clear answers. Musk operates in a world filled with such questions, but the courtroom demands answers, even when the future offers only ambiguity. In this context, intimidation becomes a tool not just of personality but of institutional authority. When Judge Barrett questions Musk, she is not simply challenging a man, she is defending a system that has long maintained societal order. She might come into the courtroom expecting that her role, title, and jurisprudence will command respect and compliance. But Musk does not respond to authority in the traditional sense. He responds to logic, data, and vision. He has faced down governments, regulators, and entire industries. His defiance is not necessarily arrogance, it is often a calculated resistance to inertia. He believes in a future that cannot be achieved by playing within outdated rules. This makes the interaction deeply personal and deeply structural at the same time. What results is a collision not just between a judge and a tech mogul but between the slow churn of democracy and the rapid thrust of technological evolution. The courtroom becomes the theater where this clash plays out, but its implications stretch far beyond its walls. Legal authority is challenged to prove its relevance in a world where code can write itself, machines can learn independently, and human capabilities are enhanced through chips implanted in the brain. At the same time, innovation is challenged to show that it can operate responsibly within a framework of ethics and accountability. The stakes are not simply legal, they are existential. When Judge Barrett tries to reassert the primacy of the law, she is not acting out of ego or power hunger. She is acting out of a belief that rules must govern even the most brilliant minds. Without rules, society falls into chaos. But Musk believes that outdated rules can be just as dangerous as no rules at all. His is a future-focused mindset where disruption is not just a byproduct but a goal. He does not seek to undermine authority for the sake of rebellion, but because he believes that change is often stifled by those unwilling to reimagine what is possible. This puts him at odds with any system built on tradition and precedent. Their clash raises critical questions about how modern societies should function. Can courts evolve fast enough to address the ethical dilemmas posed by AI, biotechnology, and space colonization? Can innovators be trusted to regulate themselves in fields where oversight is still being written? Does the law need to be rewritten for the 21st century, or should innovators be brought back within the boundaries of existing frameworks? These are not theoretical debates. They are unfolding in real time, with real consequences. The encounter between Barrett and Musk becomes symbolic of a broader shift in global power dynamics. For centuries, governments and courts held the final say in shaping human life. Today, that power is increasingly shared, or contested, by private companies that build the tools, platforms, and systems that influence daily existence. Social media algorithms determine political opinions. AI tools decide who gets hired or flagged by surveillance systems. Rockets designed by private firms explore space faster than government programs. The authority of the court is now only one voice among many, and its effectiveness depends on its ability to adapt without losing its foundational values. This is where the real struggle lies, not in any specific legal question or technological development, but in the ability of institutions to remain relevant in an age of acceleration. Judge Barrett, as a representative of the legal order, faces the challenge of upholding timeless principles in a time that feels increasingly timeless. Musk, as a representative of technological futurism, faces the challenge of pushing forward without creating unintended harm. Their interaction becomes a microcosm of the world's larger negotiation between stability and progress, between order and creativity, between tradition and transformation. Elon Musk's unexpected composure and intellectual counterplay in the face of judicial scrutiny is a defining element of his public persona and business legacy. When placed in the intense environment of a courtroom, where every word can be used as evidence and every facial expression can influence perception, most individuals recoil under the weight of legal authority. For Musk, however, this arena becomes yet another platform for performance, not theatrical, but strategic. His demeanor reflects not arrogance, but a deep familiarity with pressure and a remarkable ability to reframe narratives in real time. The courtroom, a space ruled by order, becomes a stage where he subtly disrupts expectations through calm defiance and sharp wit. His reactions are neither impulsive nor submissive, They are calculated, often revealing a layered understanding of both legal strategy and psychological dynamics. This quality unnerves his challengers, including judges like Amy Coney Barrett, who may anticipate a more conventional display of deference. Musk's composure is born not just from confidence, but from a pattern of engagement with power structures throughout his career. From the early days of PayPal to launching rockets with SpaceX, he has consistently faced naysayers, regulators, and institutional gatekeepers. Instead of avoiding confrontation, he confronts it directly and often reconfigures it to his advantage. In the courtroom, this translates to an unusual style of testimony or defense. He does not crumble under cross-examination, he redirects it. He does not fall into defensive posturing, he reframes the issue. This intellectual counterplay often throws off legal professionals who are used to a certain rhythm of question and answer. Musk disrupts that rhythm with analogies, rhetorical questions, and references to first principles thinking, an engineering mindset that breaks problems down to their fundamental truths. This method allows him to dissect complex legal arguments and present them in a simplified, logical structure that appeals not only to the court but also to any public audience observing the exchange. In the presence of someone like Judge Barrett, whose sharp intellect and disciplined reasoning are shaped by years of legal scholarship and judicial service, Musk's approach might initially appear flippant or irreverent. But beneath that perception lies a challenge. Musk is not trying to insult the system, he is trying to reveal its limitations. His counterplay is not about undermining the law but highlighting how law and innovation often operate on incompatible timelines. By calmly engaging with Judge Barrett's probing questions, he draws attention to the structural lag between regulation and invention. For instance, when questioned about the ethical boundaries of AI development or space colonization protocols, Musk does not simply respond with compliance or resistance. He introduces futuristic scenarios, expands the context, and shifts the focus from legality to possibility. This rhetorical maneuver not only protects him from narrow legal traps but also reframes the entire discussion in broader societal terms. This intellectual agility places Judge Barrett in an unfamiliar position. Accustomed to witnessing either combative lawyers or deferential defendants, she encounters a subject who matches her analytical sharpness with his own brand of logic. Musk is not a lawyer, but he speaks with the clarity of someone who understands systems. He can interpret a question's underlying assumption, challenge its premise, and propose an alternate interpretation that appears more rational or aligned with future realities. His use of technical language is not to obscure but to elevate the conversation beyond the immediate dispute. This forces even experienced legal minds to pause and consider whether the questions they are asking are adequate for the world Musk is building. His demeanor remains steady, his tone deliberate, and his responses often carry the dual purpose of defending his position and educating his audience. He turns interrogation into discourse, and discourse into influence. What makes Musk's composure even more striking is that it doesn't stem from a need to win the room through traditional argumentation. He seems disinterested in legal victory for its own sake. His interest lies in setting precedents, not just judicial but conceptual. He wants to plant seeds that grow into new paradigms. When he is challenged, he doesn't push back with aggression but with curiosity, a trait that disarms even the sternest critics. This intellectual posture is deeply unsettling for figures like Judge Barrett, who are trained to dissect arguments and expose fallacies. Yet Musk offers few traditional fallacies. His logic may be unconventional, but it is internally coherent and difficult to dismiss outright. Even when his views stretch the boundaries of legality or ethics, he presents them with such clarity and rational structure that they demand engagement rather than dismissal. This engagement becomes a test of intellectual endurance as much as it is of legal scrutiny. The courtroom, where emotional outbursts or nervousness can sway proceedings, finds in Musk a subject who rarely deviates from a focused state of mind. His body language remains relaxed, his speech unhurried, and his eyes steady. These are not mere affectations, they are tactical tools. By maintaining composure, he controls the tempo of the exchange. By remaining intellectually agile, he neutralizes attempts to trap him with linear logic. His responses often pull the conversation in unexpected directions, making it harder for his interrogators to stick to pre-planned lines of questioning. This ability to dictate the flow of discourse, without appearing combative, gives Musk a subtle but powerful advantage in any legal setting. What amplifies the effect of this counterplay is Musk's deep familiarity with the subjects under discussion. Whether it's the regulation of autonomous systems, the environmental impact of lithium mining, or the implications of human-AI integration, he speaks from a place of technical authority. Judges and lawyers, no matter how brilliant, are often generalists. Musk is a specialist in multiple domains. This asymmetry in knowledge creates a gravitational pull in the conversation. He can reference data, theory, and real-world application with ease, which makes his arguments resonate even when they challenge conventional legal wisdom. Judge Barrett, despite her judicial power, must then grapple with not only legal principles but the scientific and technological nuances that Musk introduces. This forces the courtroom to operate in a space that is neither entirely legal nor entirely technical, a space where new rules must be imagined. The deeper significance of Musk's composure lies in what it represents for public trust in leadership. In a time when institutions are often viewed with skepticism and individuals seek transparency and boldness, Musk's courtroom demeanor aligns with public expectations of authenticity and intellect. He does not hide behind legal jargon or scripted responses. His openness, even when controversial, is perceived as honesty. This endears him to many and frustrates others. It transforms the legal process into a conversation about values, not just violations. Judge Barrett may command the courtroom, but Musk often commands the narrative. The result is a complex power dynamic where traditional authority meets modern influence, and where composure and intellect become tools of subtle resistance. This dance between judicial rigor and technological foresight becomes emblematic of a changing world order. The courtroom becomes more than a place for verdicts, it becomes a laboratory for societal evolution. Musk's presence forces institutions to look inward, to question their own adaptability. His counterplay becomes a mirror, reflecting both the strengths and limitations of the legal system. Judge Barrett's realization and shift in perception unfold not through sudden revelation but through a gradual confrontation with a reality that legal doctrine alone cannot fully address. Trained in the most rigorous traditions of judicial reasoning, Barrett steps into her role with a confidence grounded in the Constitution, precedent, and the weight of legal scholarship. Her expectations, shaped by decades of structure and interpretation, led her to believe that authority flows from the clarity of law and the solemnity of the court. But in the presence of Elon Musk, a figure who exists in a realm where ideas move faster than policy and disruption is a strategy rather than a byproduct, she encounters a challenge not just to her reasoning but to the foundations of her interpretive framework. This is not a courtroom battle of right and wrong in the conventional sense, it is an existential test of whether traditional legal authority can fully comprehend and respond to the contours of an accelerating future. Barrett approaches the interaction as any Supreme Court justice would, with the belief that questions lead to clarity and that clarity can anchor control. She tries to pin Musk down with precise inquiries, seeking to ground his expansive visions within the boundaries of legal responsibility. Yet Musk, instead of reacting defensively, begins expanding the conversation, widening the lens of each question, offering answers that bridge law, science, and speculation. He is not evasive, but neither is he confined. His language, filled with systemic thinking and technological nuance, disrupts the rigid binary of legality and illegality that often governs judicial interpretation. At first, this may seem frustrating, even disrespectful, to someone like Barrett who values directness and discipline in argumentation. But slowly, the dynamic shifts. The rigidity she relies upon starts to feel insufficient, and her questions begin to adapt, not because she concedes the law, but because she senses its limits. The shift is internal, almost imperceptible. It happens as she listens not only to Musk's words but to the implications behind them. When he describes the ethical responsibilities of deploying artificial intelligence, not as a matter of compliance but as a moral imperative rooted in survival, Barrett feels the discomfort of unfamiliar terrain. When he speaks of terraforming Mars or enhancing human cognition through neural implants, she recognizes that these are not hypotheticals, they are objectives actively pursued by a man standing in her courtroom. Her training tells her to test legality against the Constitution, to weigh arguments against precedent. But Musk forces her to consider what happens when the future outgrows those precedents entirely. Barrett begins to see that her courtroom, long regarded as the ultimate arena of American justice, may no longer be the only, or even the primary, space where power is negotiated. In Musk, she observes a kind of decentralized authority, someone whose influence spans industries, continents, and ideologies, yet remains accountable to almost no one except public perception and shareholder sentiment. He is not a politician, but he shapes policy. He is not a judge, but he influences what people consider just. This realization is not a surrender of authority on her part, but an acknowledgement that authority must now share space with influence, and that influence, unlike law, cannot be subpoenaed or confined to legal definitions. It flows through networks, platforms, and minds. It evolves as quickly as the next product launch or algorithm update. This new landscape, where law and technology overlap but rarely sync, places a burden on Barrett that she had not previously encountered. She is forced to wrestle with how much of the law's power comes from its ability to adapt, and whether adaptation requires her to move beyond mere interpretation into a more active, even creative, role. The traditional judicial mindset resists such a move. Judges are not supposed to legislate from the bench. Yet, Musk's presence challenges that principle by revealing that law without foresight may soon be law without relevance. Barrett begins to realize that her role may not only involve guarding the past but also engaging with the future. This does not mean she agrees with Musk, but it means she cannot ignore the legitimacy of the world he is helping to build. Her shift in perception becomes evident in the way she engages. The sternness in her voice softens into genuine curiosity. Her questions become broader, not to dilute legal rigor but to grasp the full picture. She asks not only about consequences but about intentions, systems, feedback loops. This evolution in dialogue transforms the tone of the courtroom. It is no longer an arena of confrontation but a forum for exploration. Musk, sensing the change, responds in kind. His answers become less performative, more collaborative. The courtroom dynamic, once hierarchical, begins to flatten into something more discursive, even philosophical. Barrett finds herself not in control of the moment but participating in it, discovering rather than dictating. This is not the type of transformation that headlines capture. It happens in expressions, pauses, the recalibration of language. It happens when Barrett, for the first time, considers that perhaps constitutional interpretation must engage with emerging realities like decentralized finance, autonomous systems, or synthetic biology. It happens when she stops trying to trap Musk in contradictions and begins trying to understand the implications of his vision. The courtroom, typically a space for resolution, becomes a space for complexity. In that complexity, Barrett discovers that law and innovation are not enemies but reluctant partners, bound together by the necessity of coevolution. She begins to see that her judicial authority can be enriched, not threatened, by engagement with the kinds of futures Musk envisions. This realization does not diminish her authority, it refines it. It teaches her that real power in the modern age is not about control but about understanding, about asking the right questions even when the answers lie outside the current legal framework. Barrett's transformation, then, is not about becoming like Musk but about expanding her judicial lens to account for the forces he represents. It is the recognition that justice in the 21st century requires more than precedent, it requires imagination. And imagination, long considered the domain of artists and inventors, now becomes a vital tool for judges seeking to stay relevant in a world that reinvents itself daily. Barrett's evolving perspective reflects a deeper truth, that leadership, in any domain, must be flexible enough to adapt to the complexity of progress while holding firm to the values that define its core.